So we're back
We're back, man.
again. We're always gonna be back, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. If we're not back, we got trouble.
Yeah, we should probably figure out a new way to open these up.
It's no guest this time. It's just you and me again. So
Yeah. You and me.
you and me, you and I,
You and
I and me,
I and I.
and you.
It's you and you and I and I.
We figured out in the last one that I am not an English major, so
Yeah, that's true.
It's us.
That's okay. Us against the world, buddy. Us against the world.
What's our topic of discussion today? You don't prep me for any of these. You just tell me to sit down and start talking.
Essentially, yeah. That's usually how it goes.
That's dangerous, buddy. You should know by now. It's dangerous.
It works though. The people like that. So they say.
They need new hobbies.
I agree. So we're going to be talking about purchasing equipment.
Oh, I've done a little bit of that over the years.
Yeah. And we're going to go just a brief overview of what things that I have written down to cover is going to be like new versus used and why. When you're buying used or even new for that matter, what you're looking for, how you factor in future proofing. When you're looking at used stuff, the condition of it that you have a level of acceptance for say like wear and tear on it. At what point do you realize that something may need X amount of dollars worth of work? Use that as a haggling point. You know, where's your threshold there?
Negotiating tactics.
Yeah. The brands matter, why they matter with dealer support, online parts availability.
How much time do we have for this podcast? Because I'm pretty passionate about everything you just said. I could go on for days.
I've got 13 hours open on this SD. So,
well, for the sake of the people listening, we'll try to get it down to an hour.
Yeah,
but these are all great
works.
points to cover.
Yeah, and then basically just different implement and bucket manufacturers, how they kind of can or cannot work together with equipment you may or may not buy. And I think we could pepper in some kind of a commercial for Trucker Track. We kind of owe them that.
Todd?
Yeah.
Our number one guest.
Yeah, this is in his wheelhouse.
We'll see if we got time for Todd, and then we'll decide whether we plug him or not.
Oh. I like the green button.
You do like the green button.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, first off, obviously, if you're buying equipment, you're probably going to be going into some sort of business, whether it be hobby business. I guess that's not totally true. I mean,
mine originally started out for working on my own property.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could be buying. This would also apply for a farmer or a guy that buys 5 acres, all the way up to a guy that probably is going to buy about 15. I'd say anything we're going to talk about will cover from the corporate level down.
Yeah, I think that makes
owner,
sense.
operator, to homeowner, to farmer,
Yeah.
et cetera. Does that make sense?
And what are we going to define equipment as larger than say a garden tractor?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything with an engine on it that performs a task, whether it be a weed eater to a large excavator or a dozer.
Oh, this is going to be a long one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to focus on the bigger ticket items, not the smaller ticket items.
But you can trickle it down. Same theories apply.
So first off, this has less to do about the actual equipment and more to do about the business practice, if you ask me. And we've covered this a little bit before in some other podcasts, but
Right.
I don't care who you are. Whenever you start off in business or you buy a piece of property and you're buying a piece of equipment for the first time, you don't know what you need.
Yeah, you're right.
You don't have a clue. You may think you know what you need, and you've done a bunch of research on what you need, and that will get you in the wheelhouse. But I've never been confident enough in my ability to spec a piece of equipment that I'm unfamiliar with to go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a new one.
Would you say this might be where rental companies can come into play?
Rental companies can come into play. Let's just use an excavator for an example.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to use an excavator is because it has a lot of different options on an excavator. You got long stick, you got short stick, you got a blade, you got a coupler, you got multiple different types of thumbs, you got different types of tracks, you got different weight classes, zero tail swing, conventional tail swing. And all these options have their place. That's why they have these options.
Right.
But you have a certain workload or a certain job task you're wanting to cover with this machine, so you need to figure out which of those options work best for you and what you're doing.
Correct, yeah.
And I go back to this, whenever I bought the John Deere 120, I did a tremendous amount of research, and I wanted certain options like a progressive link thumb, a hydraulic quick coupler, a long stick machine under 30,000 pounds, and I wanted 30-inch pads. That's what my research told me. Honestly, guys, I didn't have no clue if that's what I really needed or not.
Right.
The only way I was going to find out if that's what I really needed for my business is either buy an affordable machine or rent a machine with those specs, run it for a month, and find out.
Right.
And whenever I did that, fortunately, in my case with the 120, all those specs panned out to be true. I paid $30,000 for a used machine. I bought it sight unseen. But fast forward that to whenever I wanted to replace it, and I ended up buying the Volvo 140.
Right.
I had a hard time finding a machine to replace that 120 because I knew what specs and what I wanted because I had the experience of running that machine.
Well, that almost became a difference between what you wanted versus what you needed at that point. You knew what you needed.
Yes, exactly. The guesswork was out of it.
Yeah.
So, and I still apply those practices today. You know, I recently just bought an attachment that I have no experience with.
Right.
And this attachment new is $35,000 to $40,000.
Mm-hmm.
I found a used one for $8,000.
Right.
It's my proof of concept purchase. Whenever I run this machine, one, I find out if it's profitable to operate it.
Mm-hmm.
Two, if it works and I decide to buy a newer, updated version of it, I know what options I want from teeth to pushers to doors to hydraulics to size.
Right.
Whenever I go spend the big bucks on this machine, the machine I'm talking about, I'll go ahead and say it's a forestry mulcher.
Right.
So I bought a used one for $8,000. A new one's $35,000 to $40,000. You know, they got this whole list of options in front of them. Half of them I don't know what they do because I've never operated one.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I don't know really for sure what jobs are going to become available once I get this. So I don't know if I need that option or not.
Right.
So I buy an entry level one, and I'm going to run it for 6-8 months or a year. I may find out there's no work out there for it, and it's a waste of my money and time, and I'll resell it. Or I may find out that, wow, there's some money in this. I've been doing a lot of this, so I need this particular tooth. I've been taking down this size tree, so I need that push bar option. I do a lot of mulching, so I need to make sure it has this door. I got this size machine, and I want to take down this size tree, so I need to size it somewhere in this range. Now I come to the table with knowledge.
Right.
Not a guess no more.
Mm-hmm.
I come to the table with facts.
So you now know what you need.
Right. It wasn't a $35,000 learning experience. It was an $8,000 learning experience.
Right, which I think also hand in hand with that is you've got a pretty good philosophy about buying used anything, really.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, first off, out of all the equipment I own, which is close to 30 pieces of equipment, there's only one thing I've ever bought brand new off a dealer lot.
Let me think. Hold on.
You're thinking awful hard.
Is it the Mini?
Nope.
Do I know what it is?
I think you do.
Is it a lawnmower?
Nope. It's my pintle hitch trailer that I pull behind my pickup truck.
I wasn't counting that.
That's the only thing I've ever bought new.
Right.
And that just come down to dollars, cents, and options is basically because I had multiple different cheap trailers.
Mm-hmm.
I seen how I was using my trailer. I knew exactly how I wanted this trailer to be spec'd.
Right.
And it was cheaper for me to order one new with the specs on it because finding one used wasn't an option. And the couple I found close to it were the price of a new one. So it just,
right.
Again, I had the confidence that I knew what I needed.
A lot of times with trailers, I find that kind of to be the case, especially if you know what you need.
Right.
You know, if you've already done a learning experience, like we've said, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to end up with a new trailer. Then that does not mean that you need to go and buy
right
an extremely expensive new trailer.
Yeah, I think this trailer I bought, it was an $8,000 purchase. You know
right.
what I mean? It wasn't a big deal. But that's the only thing I've ever bought from a dealer new since I've been in business.
Right.
Period. And that's just because the reality of finding one used to do what I wanted, it just wasn't a realistic option.
Right. And I mean, had you had found that random needle in a haystack, I'm sure you would have bought it used and not.
Yeah, and we can start straight down this road right now. If you're going to be shopping for used equipment, the very first thing you got to have is patience.
You need to have patience. You need to know what you're looking at. You need to know what commonly goes bad, how much things cost to fix.
Right.
And this is all research that you should be able to do before you even find
Right.
the thing that you're going to go look at.
So let's just, for sake of conversation here, Jason, let's just go hypothetically here. Let's just say that you or I, you pick one of us, is interested in buying a 40,000 pound dozer.
Okay.
Okay. And first off, I think one of the biggest mistakes you can make is being brand loyal.
Yes. 100%.
Every equipment manufacturer out there, from Doosan to Hyundai to Cat to John Deere to Komatsu, they all make a lemon. They all make a piece of equipment that's an absolute piece of crap.
And once you get into these manufacturers, how many pieces of equipment they make and they produce and everything like that, statistically, it's going to happen.
Right.
There's
just
no way around it.
I'm not faulting any of them.
No.
The reality is everything they make can't be the best of the best.
Right. And I think if you get just sidetrack here, if you get a Cat dozer and it's a serious issue machine, you have nothing but problems with this thing. But Cat works with you. They warranty everything. You don't put a dime out. They give you a rental. You know, can you really fault them for that?
Yeah, you're going down a different path than I think, because we're not talking about new equipment here. We're talking about used equipment.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll circle back around to that. Let's
Yeah.
hit on down the used equipment route here. So first off, at this point, you know what you need. You need a 40,000 pound dozer that's not LGP and it has a 4-way blade on it.
Okay.
That's your specs you're going for.
Okay.
So the biggest mistake you can make from the get-go, from day one, is say it has to be a Cat.
Right.
Or it has to be a John Deere. Because you just took your search window and now you're instead of looking at the big old wide ocean, you're looking through a porthole.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's going to be so many awesome options out there that you just closed yourself off to.
Now, I'm going to contradict myself to what I just said, too, though. You're saying don't specifically pick one you want. Do you think it's a bad idea to maybe pick a few that you don't want?
Well, this will come into play into your research.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I'm looking in general, say I'm looking for a 40,000 pound dozer.
Yeah.
I do not. The brand has nothing to do with it. Period. Mm-hmm. I don't care what color it is. I don't care what name's on it. I don't care anything.
Right.
I'm looking for a 40,000 pound dozer with my specs.
Okay.
Period. It's all I care about. Does it meet my specs?
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in there, you're going to have a budget.
Right.
Let's just say our budget's $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going through Machinery Trader, Jason, and I come up and let's just say I come across an old Allison dozer, an old Alice Chalmers dozer.
Yeah.
And this thing meets all of my specs. It's in my price range. All right. So now is when we start doing research on that dozer.
Okay.
And you start finding out about parts availability, support, forums about known issues, life expectancy,
Right.
availability of undercarriage and parts. With the internet nowadays, there's so much information out there available.
Mm-hmm.
And after you find that dozer it meets your specs, you got to make sure you're comfortable with everything that comes along with that dozer.
Okay.
And let's just say you see something in your research you don't like. Now you can eliminate that from your list.
Okay.
You see my thought process here?
Yeah, so your thought process is not necessarily figuring out what you think you want and then finding the machine. It's finding the machines available.
What's the point of doing a research on that dozer if you never find one to look at?
Very true, yeah.
You don't do the research on it until it's an option.
Right.
Save yourself the damn trouble. Sorry, I hit the microphone.
I was like, what was that?
Save yourself the trouble. So
Right.
now that's a realistic option. You found one that met your specs. So let's see if we get the warm and fuzzies about it and all this other categories.
Yeah.
And hypothetically, no, we don't. So we all go on down the road, and now we found a Komatsu dozer that meets our specs, and we're comfortable with all that other stuff. Okay, so now we're going to take the next step, and we're going to go down the road a little bit farther.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a firm believer in this. You make your money when you buy the equipment. You do not make the money when you sell the equipment.
Right.
And people are going to laugh at this. I'm going to catch slack for it, and they're going to think I'm crazy. But I got a very simple theory. I buy 90% of the fleet I own, I have bought sight unseen.
Mm-hmm.
90 times, most of the time whenever I say that, I get a big gasp and they think I'm crazy and they're
Right.
like, oh my God, I couldn't make that decision sight unseen. It's simple. It's very, very simple. If I'm dumb enough to buy it, I don't like it. I'll find somebody else dumb enough to buy it.
Right, exactly.
It's basically what it comes down to. So let's just say that I'm buying a $50,000 machine. Why do I want to spend $2,000 to go look at it? I'll take my chances and put $2,000 worth of parts on it and save myself the trouble and the trip.
Right.
And we'll get to this a little bit here, but if you buy and sell enough equipment, there's some key questions you can ask.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things in the pictures you can look at.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it enough, you can get a pretty good read on that piece of equipment of whether or not what you're getting.
Right.
You know, is somebody putting lipstick on a pig, or is this a good machine that just rolled off a job site that somebody's rolling into a tax write-off situation? You know what I mean?
Because that does happen.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
And you can tell the difference between those different situations. And you know, it goes back to like my equipment. People give me a hard time all the time for a scratch counterweight or a dirty cab and this stuff. Whenever I look at a piece of equipment, I could give two shits less about it, whether the cab's dirty or the counterweight's scratched or it's got mud in the tracks or any of that stuff. I'm looking at the grease joints. You know, I'm looking at the lights. Are the lights still on it? So I guess we'll go into the next phase of this. So
Yeah.
You found a dozer. It's a Komatsu.
Okay.
You've done your research on this dozer, and you're comfortable with that it's a quality machine from the factory, the way it was built. You know, you can get aftermarket and dealer support for it if you need to. It fits the budget, transportation costs, getting it back. You're comfortable with all that.
Right.
So now you're looking at the machine, you're studying, and you're trying to figure out through 15 pictures whether or not this thing is legitly listed and the description is good on it, or if somebody's blowing smoke up your hiney.
Which does happen.
Right. So there's two things that I look for on a piece of equipment that 9 times out of 10 will tell me how somebody took care of the rest of that machine.
Okay.
Do you have any idea what they are?
Grease points.
Nope. You'll probably never guess what they are.
The dipstick.
Nope.
All right, shoot.
All right. The first thing you can look for that'll tell you if somebody has took care of that machine and had a reputable mechanic working on it is
Numbers on the filters.
Nope.
No?
Is if the batteries are properly secured with the factory mounts.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because if somebody's taken the time over the years to keep those batteries in there the way the factory intended,
Yeah.
they've also taken the time to put every wiring loom back where it belonged, put every bolt back into place it belonged, and everything else. Because the first thing every redneck mechanic does is put a damn bungee cord on the freaking batteries.
Or a battery that's not supposed to be in there that they had in the barn.
Right, exactly. And that has played to be true on every piece of equipment I've ever bought. If I see a picture and the batteries are all wired in there and the wrong batteries or the wrong hold downs or the wrong stuff, if you get looking around that machine, you will find that plays true throughout it. Somebody who has worked on that thing didn't give two craps about the machine. They just wanted to get it going that day.
Right.
And then they forgot about what they did and is rednecked from one end to the other.
Oh, yeah.
If you get a machine that the batteries are still properly attached in, you can pretty much go through that machine and find everything still in the place it's supposed to be from the factory. The second thing is the lighting package on the dozer. If somebody has taken the time to keep the lights in operating order and all the shields and guards around them and all the wires, that's one of the first things that always gets tore off, especially in clearing or rough applications like that.
Right.
So if they took the time to fix that when it got broke, because it did get broke, they probably took the time to fix every little other knick-knack on that machine when it broke because they cared.
Right.
Now, you tell most people, everybody wants to look at the dipstick and the undercarriage and the slop in the boom and all this other stuff. Yeah, you need to look at that stuff.
Right.
But if you want a quick glance of overall condition of that machine, you look at the batteries and the lights.
That makes sense.
You know, that's what I study in pictures whenever I look at a machine. Now, you looked at the batteries, everything's looking good there.
Yeah.
You looked at the lights, all right. You know, along with the lights, you can study the boom or the hydraulic hoses all folded off and, you know, all that stuff. But so then the very next place you look is the cab. The cab don't have to be clean. I don't care if the floorboard's full of mud and this, that, and the other. I just want to make sure all the buttons are still there, and the screens are punched out.
Right.
All of the controls are there. I don't really care if they work or not. I just need everything to be there. I can't. It's a lot more difficult to fix something that's not there.
Because you don't know what it's supposed to be anyway.
Right. It's pretty easy to fix it if it's there. So at this point, you need to make sure the machine is complete. All the panels are on it, all the guards are on it, all the buttons are in it, all the switches are there. Everything that machine needs to operate the way it did from the factory is still attached to that machine.
Right.
Okay? So once the batteries are in it, the lights are on it, and everything that's supposed to have is attached to it, then you start going in the mechanical condition of it. Mm-hmm. So, if the undercarriage is wore out, okay, who gives a crap? Just make sure the price reflects it.
Right.
You know what I mean? If the boom needs pins and bushings, who gives a crap? Just make sure the price reflects it.
Right.
If the thing needs an engine, who gives a crap? Just make sure the price reflects it.
Assuming the engine runs.
Right.
So you can function test.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's, once you kind of get because there's so many machines you're going to eliminate right off the bat if you just look at those first few things first. Mm-hmm. So you get on down the road and, all this stuff is kind of checking out. So you come to a crossroads, and your crossroads is, in my threshold on this is $100,000 and more. So if this machine's over $100,000, at this point I will do one of two things. And most likely what I will do is hire a third-party inspector to go look at the machine.
Right.
So if it's a Volvo, I'll call up the local Volvo dealer and said, hey, I got a machine over here for sale. Can you go do a report on it and report back to me? Because they don't have nothing. They don't give a crap. They don't have nothing to care. Or if it's close, I will drive and look at that. But that's honestly rare cases, guys. I've only done that one time of all the machines I bought. And it's actually the biggest piece of crap machine I own is the one I actually went to go look at, which is the Volvo excavator. Mm-hmm. Everything else I've bought sight unseen. I bought it at a price that I was fully prepared. If there was issues, I could afford to fix those issues and still have the machine for undervalued price.
Right.
Now, one huge advantage I got, and I'll let you take the lead on this a little bit if you want to, is I can do a lot of my own mechanicing work.
Right.
That's not always the case for everybody, so you may need to have a trusted mechanic, in your close circle that you trust.
Yeah, I think that's definitely important. I also think that there's a lot of, this goes back to being prepared. There's a lot of classes that you can take. There's almost every tech school out there has night classes.
Right.
You can learn the basics. And you can learn the basics to a point where you can do a lot of the work. Specialty stuff, okay, fine. You're probably gonna have to go to the dealer with it.
Right.
Good thing about taking a machine to the dealer is a lot of heavy equipment shops around here are still flat rate, right? Or are they hourly now?
Most of them are hourly.
Okay. Well, either way, you should be able to call your local dealer and say, hey, how much would it cost me to put a final drive in a D6 dozer? You call your local cat dealer. And they should be able to give you a roundabout. Well, all right, you might be looking at $25,000.
Right.
So if you go out or someone goes out and looks at this machine and says, oh, well, final drive is kind of weak. Now your price needs to reflect potentially $25,000.
Right.
So yeah, I guess you are fortunate in the sense that you do all of your own work. Trying to think of how to make that portrayed to the average person.
Yeah, so whenever I look at a machine with a final drive out of it, that's a $10,000 repair to me.
Right.
You look at a machine with a final drive out of it, that might be a $25,000 repair for you.
Well, I'm going to repair it myself.
Well, hypothetically, you know what I'm saying?
No, I know.
So you need to understand, I think what you're trying to say is you need to understand your situation.
Yeah, you need to know, before you consider pulling a trigger on this, you need to know what you can and cannot fix.
Right.
And I guess my point is that you've been a mechanic. I am a mechanic. But there are classes out there for the person who's not a mechanic, maybe the business owner, to go learn basics.
Yep.
It's going to be a very rare occasion that you're going to find somebody going through that.
I think I got an example of this I can give you that'll maybe bring this full circle a little bit. Is I'm going to back before I was doing YouTube, 4 or 5 years before I bought the Volvo, I was actively looking then as a machine to replace or back up the 120. Mm-hmm. And I come across this heck of a deal on a 314C Cat. Mm-hmm. It was an LCR machine. Had low hours on it, and but it fell off a lowboy trailer and the cab was smashed on it.
Okay.
And I thought, well, man, this thing was just dirt cheap. And it was a low hour machine, and it met a lot of the specs I was looking for. It had a blade on it. And I'm not the best body guy. And I searched for a month or two. I searched for a month or two for cab for this machine. I was having a hard time finding anything. But I kind of got the feeling that if I could find a cab, I was probably looking at about 10 grand. I just had to be patient to find one.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought the machine and brought it back here to the shop, and I couldn't find a cab. And I was starting to go through the process of rebuilding the cab I had, and quickly realized that it was out of my skill set. Like this, I mean, I could make it to where it was usable, but it was not going to be a nice machine. You know what I mean? And I had it for about 1.5 years or 2 years, and it sat here in the shop taking up space. And I walked in here one day, and I thought, you know what? It's time to cut my losses on this machine. So I bought the machine for $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I had about $35,000 in it for some parts and my time and stuff like that.
Right.
So I put it on the internet for $45,000. Sold it in 2 hours. And the moral of that story goes back to you make your money when you buy.
Yeah.
You know, I recognized that was a good deal. And even if everything went horribly wrong like it did,
Mm-hmm.
I was still confident I could at least get my money back at the very minimum or make some money at it, anyway.
Yeah.
And a farmer ended up buying it. He still runs it today with that beat up cab on it. I mean, I had it to where the door lease closed and the weather stayed out, but it wasn't pretty by no stretch of the imagination. And it was one of the best purchases he ever made. You know what I mean?
But how much would that excavator have cost him?
Yeah, it was, that excavator with a new cab on it. That excavator with a new cab on it was probably an $85,000 to $90,000 machine.
So him even buying it after you bought it and resold it, got it at half price.
Right. So, I'm not immune to getting in over my head or tackling something I can't do. But still, I knew what my entry level cost was, and I knew that I was low enough that I could afford to take that risk.
And how many times do you think it happens that you come across this great deal like that per se versus somebody gets burned?
So it all goes back to your research. Everybody hears about the horror stories.
Yeah.
I mean, me in particular, I don't really go around bragging about all the home runs I hit.
Mm-hmm.
Nor does anybody care. But out of all the machines I've bought sight unseen, I wouldn't say I've ever been burnt on one, but there is one machine in particular that I bought. It was a 450G John Deere dozer, and I was misled on it. I bought a pretty paint job, and when the machine arrived, it was not as described.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fortunately for me, I bought this thing dirt cheap, and by the time I got done with it, I broke even on it.
Right.
You know what I mean? The only money I made off that machine is I operated it for 2 years on the job sites and had the revenue from that. But
Mm-hmm.
I sold it for the exact amount I had in it.
Right.
Again, the saving grace in that is I negotiated $5,000 off the price in the beginning.
Right.
And got the price down to where it was low enough I was comfortable to take that risk. I thought I hit a home run on it, and it was it was a break even deal. Ironically, way back on Captain Kleeman's channel, there's some videos of rebuilding that old dozer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there is some videos out there, that old 450G dozer, but that is the only situation that I wouldn't even call that a scare, but that's the only time that I was, almost got caught in a desperate situation. But, I'm going to turn that around on you a little bit. I think of the thousands and thousands of dollars that I have saved in time I stay on the job site producing revenue,
Mm-hmm.
not traveling around looking at this stuff, because
Yeah.
it all comes down to purchase price.
Yeah.
Like if it's a good enough deal, and it's a good enough deal, and you're confident it's a good enough deal, and you're buying it with room in there for repairs, to just stop wasting your time, pull a damn trigger, and go get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, get it here, get evaluated, because you're also not gonna go out to Joe Schmo's auction site and tear all the belly pans off this thing.
No.
That's just not realistic. You're gonna go out there, if it's got good batteries in it, You're going to start it. Maybe they'll jump it for you if it doesn't.
Yep.
You're going to run it forward and backwards 6 times, put the blade up and down.
And if you guys are going to an auction, the only way you're ever going to get a good deal at an auction is you go there to buy whatever's cheap, not what you want. If you're going to an auction to buy a dozer, if you're going to auction to buy a D6 or a 40,000 pound dozer, and you're there for 2 or 3 items and you're hoping they go cheap, not going to happen. If you want to go to an auction and make money, is as that auctioneer goes down the line, I don't care if it's a fork truck, a crane, a roller, a dozer, an excavator, a locomotive, a man lift, a concrete mixer, a straw blower, a concrete bucket, the list can go on and on. You need to know what every one of those pieces of equipment would sell for retail, and anytime any one of those go for half price, you buy it. No matter what it is, you buy it.
Exactly.
That's how you make money in an auction. Is you don't go there for a specific piece of equipment. You go there for a good deal.
Yep.
No matter what it is. That's my quick theory on an auction.
I would agree with you.
But anyways, we got a little bit off subject there with the auction. So anyways, yeah, that's my story on, the one time I come close, but I flip that around to the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars I've saved by not chasing down all these leads and studying pictures and different stuff like that.
Right.
Now, if you're fortunate enough to talk to somebody, anytime you can get history on a machine is always a huge, huge plus.
Okay.
If I always prefer, my first choice is always to buy from an individual, not a dealer.
I would agree with that, yeah.
And keep in mind, individuals can be salespeople.
Yeah.
But, some of the key questions you need to ask is, how long have you owned the machine? The big one is what's the purpose of getting rid of it?
Right.
The famous one is I bought it to do this lake and I'm done with the lake and now I'm getting rid of it. You know what I mean? There's always more to that story.
Well, I mean, I bought my Mini for clearing the front yard.
Right.
And now I'm done with it, but I'm not selling it.
Right. Because it's a good machine.
Yeah. But it does happen.
Right. It
but
does.
Again, going back to doing your homework, you should be able to see that machine and know if that's the case or not.
Right.
So
yeah, and then one thing that always scares me in that situation is if a farmer has never owned a dozer in his life, buys a dozer to build something, he's going to be a hell of a lot rougher on that dozer than somebody knows how to operate one every day.
That's very true.
You know what I mean? So that don't honestly get me really excited.
Right.
That actually throws up a tremendous amount of red flags because one, he can honestly be misleading you and not even know just because of his lack of knowledge of the machine.
Yeah.
Like he don't know what the difference is between 50% undercarriage and 80% undercarriage. He don't understand the hydraulic drives. The temperature on that's running hotter than what it should, and that means that big dollars in the next couple thousand hours.
Yeah.
And it's no disrespect to the seller.
He might not even know how to tension tracks.
Right. No disrespect to the seller, but he just don't have the knowledge to properly answer your questions, and you need to realize that.
Right.
So I do like buying from individuals because on the flip side of that, sometimes they're brutally honest and they give you information that's not good information. They think it's great information. You know what I mean? And you can process all that and do what you need to with it. So usually with an individual, at least if you're buying from an individual, you do have access to somebody that has ran that thing more than just up and down the sales lot. You know what I mean? So good or bad or indifferent. I guess what I'm trying to say is consider the experience level of the operator you're taking the information from, and then apply that to your knowledge of the machine and make sure everything lines up.
Yeah. If it barks like a dog, smells, what is it? Barks like a dog, smells like a dog?
Quacks like a, if it, yeah, you got that all messed up.
Listen.
We're going to have the tail wagging the dog here in a minute.
Oh boy.
So, the flip side of this is, your next option is you're probably going to be buying from some of equipment peddler, or you're fortunate enough to go up to the big leagues and go from, some new paint or something off a new lot. Equipment dealers are not always the devil. there's a
No.
lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys buy stuff at auction and they really do not have any knowledge of the machine at all.
Mm-hmm. They're just making a living like you and I.
Right. And at that point, you have to revert back to everything else we looked about, as far as lights and battery holders and just make your own assessment of the condition of the machine.
Right.
But, some of these guys, like the 850 dozer I bought, I called this guy up and I said, "You got any history on the machine?" He goes, "I don't know nothing about it, but the guy down the street owned it for 20 years. Here's his phone number." And you get really lucky, and because this 850B John Deere dozer I bought is a good example of. I did my research on this machine, okay, and at 10,000 hours, they were known for losing the hydrostatic drive. And that was about a $20,000 repair, which most of them didn't get repaired because that's what the value of the machine was.
Right.
So I seen this dozer on the internet, and it had 10,000 hours on it, and they were asking $25,000 for it. And I thought, man, my research tells me it's a beautiful dozer. It's in good shape. My research tells me that's a bad decision.
Yeah.
And this dozer set for sale for 6-8 months. And finally I decided I'm just going to make a phone call and ask about it because it was a really good looking dozer. So I called the guy up, and he's like, "Yeah, we traded for the guy down the street, and I don't know a whole lot about it. It's been sitting here for 6-8 months. They didn't even own the dozer. They were trying to sell it for this other guy."
Right.
And he goes, "I'll give you his phone number. If you want to, call him." I said, "Sure, I'll give him a call." So I call this guy up, and he's like, "Oh, man," he goes, "that's an awesome dozer." He goes, "We just put 20 grand in that thing about 1,500 hours ago." He goes, "It's got all new CAT recertified hydrostatic drives in it, all new CAT undercarriage on it." He goes, "I can't believe we got rid of it." He goes, that dozer's in absolute tip-top shape. He goes, that dozer should run for another 10,000 hours. And I thought, that's the information I need. So he told me, he goes, "Have the guy go out there and pull the back panel off of it." And he goes, "There's a tag in there, and it says all that on it." So I asked the guy to go out there and take the panel off, put a tag on it. Sure enough, there it was,
Yeah.
And so I bought it. And, I got it here to the shop, everything checked out, and it's been, an awesome purchase. I've put 3,000 hours on it since I've had it, and I had a minute's trouble out of it. It's Jerry's favorite dozer.
Right.
But it's just the process. In that situation, I was lucky enough to have access to somebody that gave me some information. Mm-hmm. It really made me feel a lot more comfortable about the price in that machine, because without that information, I probably wouldn't have paid over $10,000 for that machine.
Right. Which means you probably would have not gotten it.
Which means I probably wouldn't have bought it, and I would have missed out on an awesome machine.
Right.
So, and the guy put more money in the dozer than what it was worth, but that's not my problem. That's his problem. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that happens.
Right.
So when it comes to speccing out equipment, say, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a new machine. You can buy a used machine at a dealer or something like that, right, and have them change it around for you.
Right, retrofit it.
Yeah. How important is that?
Oh, my goodness. Well, a Bobcat's not a skid steer. A skid steer is not a skid steer. I mean, the options are...
Yeah.
If you guys watch YouTube or do any of this stuff, you can see one piece of equipment in hundreds of different configurations.
Right.
I don't know, maybe a skid steer is a good one to kind of go down this path on a little bit, because...
I'd say a skid steer or like maybe a mini or something.
So first off, especially if you're in a business like me, as we do a variety of businesses, mm-hmm, a variety of work. So some days my mini excavator is going to be too big. Some days my mini excavator is not going to be big enough.
Right.
So you got to find that overall average of, like, where's my sweet spot? Like, what's my parameters? I want to work between here and there. So what fits in there? Mm-hmm. I get the comment all the time of, you need a bigger excavator. Well, I might need for that job, but guess what? I get by just fine with what I got because right, I have it spec'd accordingly to do that. Mm-hmm. The more universal you can make your equipment, the better. So right, I do have a window of work, parameter of work that I'm looking for that I want this machine to cover. So that kind of goes with the size. Mm-hmm. In an excavator or a skid steer, am I going with a 75 horse or a 95 to 100 horse?
Right.
So once I get the size down pat, then what type of work am I going to be doing? Like, what kind of options do I need? Do I want tracks or do I want tires? Do I want high flow? Do I want standard flow? You know, so you start asking your questions. Like, if I'm chasing a bunch of forestry mulching jobs, I need high flow.
Right.
If I'm going to be working in the mud, you know, I want tracks. If I'm going to be working, you know, if I'm buying this machine just to plow snow, I probably want
buy tires.
Tires, you know what I mean? And that goes back to, you need to do all your research and find out what you think you need. And then I suggest buying an entry-level machine and prove your concept.
Yeah.
And then if your concept proves to be true, then you start specking out that higher dollar, nicer machine with the options you know you need, not a guess anymore.
Right. I'm gonna ask you this question, but I know you're not gonna answer it anyway. So, at what point, when do you buy new paint?
So I don't know if I'm the best person to answer this question because I don't own new paint.
Right.
Mostly because
Is there a time and a place for new paint?
yes, there is a time and a place for new paint. Absolutely, there's a time and place for new paint. So if your business model doesn't have service trucks or doesn't have a mechanics on staff, and you're running 30 machines or so, 10 machines or so, and you're doing a lot of the same production work where you're keeping them busy on a high hourly rate or a high hourly usage per month, you're probably better off buying some new machines and having the dealer support behind them. Because what you're saving in mechanics and service trucks, you're spending with the dealer and their support. That type of business model to me is a little bit less of an owner operator and more of a
Corporate.
More of a GC type guy.
Yeah.
Where you know what I mean? You're going out here and you're bidding and looking at this job, and you got like government contracts or utility contracts or stuff of that nature. So that's definitely a place where new equipment comes into mind because they don't want to mess. The biggest myth out there is old equipment's not as reliable as new equipment. That's the absolute bullshit. So
Far from the truth.
somebody comes to me and says I buy new equipment because I don't want downtime, I just freaking laugh in their face because that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
I got a 20-year-old Traco with 13,000 hours on it that I will, if I take it to a job and I cannot break down, like breaking down is not an option.
Right.
I will take that machine before my new one because I don't trust my new one.
Yeah. For good reason too.
Yeah. Just that is absolute asinine, uneducated, ridiculous excuse for buying new equipment is because it's more reliable. That's one of the stupidest things I ever heard in my life. It's just absolute bullcrap. You know,
a lot of people believe in that though.
Oh well, they need to get a life. I mean, that's. If you're going to have a lot more issues in business if you got that mentality that you're buying new paint for dependability.
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely
bullcrap. I got a brand new piece of equipment sitting on the lot right here on my driveway that's got less than 10 hours on. I'm waiting on the dealer to show up to work on it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's stupid. Not that particular situation, but the whole mindset.
That particular situation's a very specific situation. I don't think that's a fair assessment.
No, it's not a fair assessment to that. But my point is the mentality of new equipment is more dependable than old equipment is crap.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I go back to my truck, and you know, I wasn't planning to buy a new truck by any stretch of the imagination, and we ended up buying a new truck for a few key reasons. But that was brand new, and then spent 3.5 weeks in the dealer getting warranty work.
Yep.
You know, and I think it had 1,200 miles on it.
There's also some truth to used equipment is proven.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of truth to used equipment is proven. So that's one situation where new paint comes into play. The second situation, and I might find myself in this situation in the near future, is where you want a piece of equipment a certain way. You want certain specs on that,
right?
Certain options on that, and it's unique to what's normally out there, and you have no choice but to buy it new to get what you want. if I ever buy a new piece of equipment, that'll be the reason why I buy a new piece of equipment.
What about people who toss around write-offs? I think there's a common misconception there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a common misconception there. It's only a write-off if you really need it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But you can also write off a used piece of equipment.
You can, and here's my thought on, let's just say I got a $100,000 equipment budget for the year.
Right.
So I could go buy one piece of equipment for $100,000 and have it, or I could go buy 3 pieces of equipment for $100,000, and now I got 3 times more options for work.
Right.
I'm 3 times more diverse.
With a very similar write-off.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think that's where a lot of people get hung off or get hung up.
This is what everybody else forgets, is I can buy a used piece of equipment, use it, sell it, and make money. There is nobody in this world that's ever bought a new piece of equipment, used it, sold it, and made money.
Nope. Because you're chasing your depreciation tail.
Nobody's ever talked about that.
Nope.
You know what I mean? So, again, you make money when you buy. You don't make any money buying a new piece of equipment with the intentions of using it and reselling it.
No.
Now, this, you got to keep in mind the realm we're working in. You get into mine production and big, heavy highway work and large commercial jobs. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
I'm talking about small guys like me.
I mean, I work with a very large company, and we have a very large equipment budget in the hundreds of millions, if not billions, category. And we buy all of our equipment new.
Right.
And we've got a general rule of thumb that when that machine hits the property, you've got about 18 months before you can count on it. And that's not me exaggerating or anything like that. I mean, we use specialized equipment, and it comes from specialized equipment manufacturers, and it's all got bugs in it. It's all got problems. It's all got to be fixed. It's all got to be redesigned. I don't think we've ever had a single piece of equipment show up and hit the job site and not be a problem.
Right.
It's just there's something to be said about proven equipment.
Right. Right. And the price and the proven equipment is cheaper. That's what everybody seems to miss. Some people go down this this road of new equipment. It's a social status or a look at me type thing.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I don't know why anybody'd want to play that game. I'm gonna let my work do the talking, not my equipment. You know what I mean? It's yeah, I just don't play that game. I just don't.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I'm not even gonna go down that road.
Yeah, and again, everybody's situations may vary, but the situations that we're specifically talking about, or that we're familiar with at least, are not that.
No.
No.
You're never going to see me going down the road with a brand new truck or a brand new excavator or a brand new anything. And I want my equipment to be presentable and look nice.
Right.
But the first thing is it to be reliable and functionable.
Right. And
affordable.
Some of those points, actually, just to clarify, we bought the new truck because at the time, Ford was running a whole bunch of promotions that we ended up walking away. I think we paid $8,000 less for the brand new truck than for the 3-year-old one sitting on the lot with 40,000 miles on it. There's something to be said. Maybe the 2017 one would have not had the water leakage issue, that we had. But, I mean, in the reality of it, the downtime of 3 weeks wasn't $8,000.
Right.
So, like I said, that was a very, very specific, very niche situation that kind of walked out with a new piece. And I don't think I would ever do it again. I mean, I'll never be the person to walk out and look for something new.
Right.
It's just, I don't see it.
I don't know. We can all dream,
But I don't even dream about that. I go back to what you said earlier about having a budget for the year and buying 3 pieces.
Yeah.
That's where I would be happy.
Right.
Like, okay, well, I need to go buy a truck this year, and I'm going to budget myself $65,000. Well, I was able to buy a truck that works that's used for 40, had 25 left over, and look, I went and bought a skid steer.
Right.
You know, something like that.
So now if the trucking business gets slow, you can go clean up a fence row or
Exactly.
or go do something,
Yeah.
along those lines.
Or I've got another asset down the road that if I have to start dumping things to make money and put food on the table,
Yeah,
I
you
can.
can sell the skid steer and you still got the truck.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's how I look at
all your
things.
eggs are not in one basket.
Exactly.
Yeah, and people that follow my YouTube channel know the huge diversity of work I do.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's because of the diversity of equipment I got.
Yeah.
And my loader, for example, I bought that for $7,000 or $8,000. I use it quite a bit. It's a very handy tool I got. But there's no way I could afford to buy a loader and have a payment on it and sit as much as what it does.
Right.
But I bought it cheap. I bought it affordable. If it sits on a lot for 30 days and don't get used, it's not a big deal. But whenever that random job comes up of pulling boat docks out of the lake and the loader's the right tool for the job, I make a killing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I got the equipment available and I can go do it.
Right. And you can never be backed into a corner.
Right.
Yeah.
And, the last thing you want to do is, your customer, that your biggest customer you do all this work for, all of a sudden he comes over to the job that you're not accustomed to, and you got to tell him to call your competition because you don't have the equipment to do that. And all of a sudden your competition went in there and showed you up.
Yep.
You just went from being the man in to the man out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so there's a lot of different ways to look at that.
Right.
As far as how to approach that, but. And I always caution everybody that I give advice to, what works for me may not work for you. So
that's, I feel like that's a disclaimer that should go on this entire podcast.
Yeah, so you need to take what information we were presenting and use that as knowledge to make a decision for your situation, because nobody understands your situation as good as what you do yourself.
Or you should be understanding it.
Yeah, I hope you're the most understanding person.
Yeah.
I hope you're the most understanding person in your business. But that's, the whole point of these podcasts is to kind of give people knowledges or thinking points. I think is a good way to describe that.
You can kind of listen to what we're talking about and build on it in your own.
Yeah, because we're kind of fortunate between the two of us because we've got different experiences in this department as far as buying and selling equipment. And
I've made a lot of mistakes that other people can learn from.
Right.
That's how I always describe it.
And I'm not immune to the mistakes. I've made some along the ways too, but thank goodness that I had my systems in place and I protected myself from that,
I will say that all the mistakes that we've made, we haven't lost money yet.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've broken even more times than I would like to be or to admit, but I've yet to lose anything.
Yeah.
So,
hopefully that helps there. Did we cover all of your talking points there, Mr. Works a Lot?
We did. Yeah, we can wrap this one up. I think we already lost one camera, and the other one's at 8% now. So, unless anybody wants to sit in here and look at me talking to the microphone doing nothing.
Well, hopefully they're listening to it, not watching you. But
that's a good point. We are on all the streaming services now.
Yeah, that is correct.
You could do Apple, you could do Spotify, whatever. Just search A Few Points from Perfect podcast, and
still posting on our YouTube channel as well, which has the video along with the podcast. If you prefer to go that route.
Yep.
Have plenty more subjects and topics coming, so stay tuned for all that.
Yeah. Suggestions, comments, A Few Points from Perfect at yahoo.com. Go to the YouTube channel, leave a comment. Best way to get a hold of us.
Yep.
So.
But, thanks for listening, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something, at least gave you some food for thought. And I guess we'll catch you on the next one.
Sounds good.